let's talk about the Audio Technica 3000 series wireless systems. Okay, so I'm going to warn you in advance. This is probably going to be a pretty long one just because I've actually been using these quite a bit and I have a lot of thoughts on them. And I am going to be kind of comparing them to the Sennheiser EW100 G4 series microphone, because I also own those, and they're in similar price points. And first of all, just full disclosure, I'm kind of a Sennheiser guy. I own two of the Sennheiser EW100 G4 wireless systems with two handheld mics, one lav pack, and then for the lav pack, I've got the, I think, ME2 lav, and then the headset, which I think maybe is like ME3 or something like that. And then with Audio Technica, I bought 10 of these. And I think I've got 8 handhelds, 4 lav packs, and then I've got, I went with the cardioid pattern lapel mic, and then I also bought 2 of the headset systems. And that is why this is going to be kind of a long video. So what you might be asking yourself is, Brian, why did you buy Audio Technica when you already own some Sennheisers? Well, as I said, I bought 10 of these, and I had a rental coming up, and they wanted 9 wireless systems. And just price-wise, I don't get the best. Like, I'm not an official Sennheiser dealer, but I do get them through a wholesaler. And my wholesale pricing isn't the best on Sennheiser stuff. So with Audio Technica, I get way better pricing. So I was able to save about $100 per wireless system by going with the Audio Technica stuff. And when you're buying 10 of them, that's like saving $1,000, which is pretty much getting 2 of them for free for me. So it just kind of made sense price-wise. And I did a lot of research, and I do like the fact that the Sennheiser system's got 42 megahertz of tunable bandwidth. The Audio Technica has 60 megahertz. So in the price range, I knew that I was going to be using these for corporate events. And if you start to get up to like, 9, 10, a dozen mics in a system, it's just nice to have a wider tunable range, especially if you are in hotel convention centers where they might also have pre-installed wireless systems. I'm not saying the Sennheisers wouldn't have worked. They probably would have, but saving money, getting more tunable bandwidth, I just thought, what the heck, I'm going to give the Audio Technicas a shot. In the end, my rental fell through, so I was like, son of a bitch. I rack mounted 8 of them. I left 2 in the box, which are on sale on Reverb if you're interested. Although I'll probably eventually end up rack mounting them and just using them, and I may end up buying 2 more. So I'm just going like all in on Audio Technica, which is kind of weird because in my area, at least, it always seems like the Audio Technica mics are like the first mics people buy, and they're used to using like their older, really cheap VHS, or VHF, not VHS, VHF, wireless mic systems. Like, I had an old VHF Audio Technica mic, and it worked like crap. So I feel like Audio Technica kind of gets a bad rap because of their cheap stuff. Now, I don't believe they sell VHF mics anymore, so maybe they're getting rid of like the really low-end crap, and they're doing a lot of digital. Don't know how their digital works out, but this is about the 3000 series. So anyways, where to start? Let's first start by talking about rack mounting. And I might have to go off camera here for a second. Well, if you really want to see it, I'll make a new video. But rack mounting wise, the nice thing is it does come with a rack mounting kit. So does the Sennheiser. Where I'll say the Sennheiser probably goes a little better is when you rack mount your Sennheiser, there is 2 holes for BNC antenna connectors in the front. So if you're just rack mounting one, and you're just doing it like a DJ case or just in a rack and you just want 2 antennas popped out the front, you can do that with a Sennheiser. You cannot do that with the Audio Technica. I don't know why. Like, if you're putting a mic in a rack, why would you attach the antennas to the back side inside the rack case? And you might be saying, well, just get the RF venue antenna they try to sell you, right? Okay, you can do that, but that's another $400. Like, how about make your rack a little narrower so you can fit the BNC connectors in the front? That is definitely a gripe, and I'm kind of dealing with it because the way that I'm setting up my mics and why I might buy two more is I think I'm just going to go complete Audio Technica and maybe sell my Sennheisers. So I'm going to do two 4-packs. I've already built one 4-pack with a drawer. I'm going to build another 4-pack with a drawer. That's 8 mics. So when I do larger corporate events, I can just take out my two 4-packs. I also want to make a 2-pack for smaller corporate events or wedding ceremonies where I might need a handheld and a lav. Handheld and a lav. And then just for rentals, I kind of want to make two 1-packs with just like the SKB, and it makes a nice little rack-mounted little 1U padded bag thing with some nice storage for whether you're throwing a handheld in there or not. And I was thinking about doing two of those for like rental customers. But what do I do with the antennas? Just shove them in the back? I don't know. It's that's kind of the annoying part of it because there's no rack mount units in the front. And they don't have. So Sennheiser, you can buy these nice. They don't come with it, but you can buy these nice plastic cases. Now Audio Technica, if you look around, they have cases like this, but they're all for older models or discontinued models. They don't make the plastic case, at least that I can find, for the 3000 series, the current 3000 series. And I find that to be annoying because these boxes, they don't last forever in the rental world. So anyways, that's my comparison between rack mounting. Sennheiser kind of wins in that category just because they throw the BNC mounts in the front. So if you rack mount one unit, you can put the antennas in the front. Audio Technica does not. Let's talk about the handhelds quick. Little comparison between the two handhelds. They're roughly the same size. Audio Technica's obviously kind of got a matte black finish. This has kind of got like a shiny bluish silver finish. They both have power buttons on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and turn both of them on quick. Perhaps. Well, okay, so you can see, first we'll start out with the Sennheiser Display. So the Sennheiser Display is backlit, and eventually the backlight shuts off, but you can still see the display. So if you're naming your wireless mics, it'll still it'll show up for you. Now with the, I'm quite positive these batteries are good. Oh, you can tell I'm new to these. I keep, every time I forget the switch is on the inside. And you can see that that lights up. I think it's got like a, I don't know, must be LCD. I don't think it's OLED. But anyways, you can see I was using this at an event, and it is titled Backup 1. Now the downside about the Audio Technica is that this display, since it's black with light up letters, goes out. And there's no way to just keep it on. So it will eventually go out like that. And if you have, you know, a bunch of mics laying around and you're like, oh, what one is that? I mean, you can hit the bottom and then see what it says. So there is that, but it is kind of nice that you can lay the Sennheisers down, and if you're backstage, just have a flashlight and roll over it, and it's always on. So you can always see what it says. And this one currently says DJ. I did a wedding dance with it 2 days ago and labeled it DJ, because originally it was labeled like Lav 1 or something like that. The bass was. The other things that I will say about it. You'll see no mute switch on the Audio Technica, but there is a mute switch here. I always complain about the red because I feel like red means no, but red actually means it's live and good to go. And I think maybe they made it red because of like the on-air light, or like a camera shoots on you, the red lights turn on. So I'm thinking maybe that's it. But it is nice having the mute switch. But in pro environments, always disable the mute switch. You can do that through the menu. I was doing sound for Dawkin a couple years ago, and I had just gotten these mics, and I didn't think to disable the mute switch. And he's singing a song, and then he goes to throw the mic back in the stand, because he is a mic fidgeter. In stand, out of stand, in stand, out of stand. And he had the mute button down, slapped it in the stand, and he engaged the mute. And luckily we had a wired mic, backup wired mic right off stage that I had Corey, good old sound tech Corey, run that out to him. That's how he finished the show. But totally my error. I did not disable the mute switch. So in a pro environment, you really don't need the mute switch because it's probably going to be disabled anyways. But for DJing and stuff, I feel like at wedding dances, it is nice to be able to use a mute switch. Now you do have what I tried to power it up with earlier, the multifunction button. And I have it set to be a mute, but where you hold it for 3 seconds and then it'll say muted. Hold it for 3 seconds, it's unmuted. And you can change it to have an instant click mute, click unmute. But I leave it on the 3 seconds so that if I just want to tap it and see what microphone it is, I can just tap it and see without muting it. Now the downside is it is a little bit trickier. Everybody's used to like a thumb switch or, oh, there's a button I can push. Like that's where they look for it. So you really have to specify, hey, there's a button under here, press and hold it for 3 seconds and it'll unmute it, it'll mute it. But that can get a little confusing for people. So I'd say that's probably the one downside with this. Also, I will say the Audio Technica probably has a little bit more handling noise than the Sennheiser. Feel in the hand, I think they're about the same weight, but the Sennheiser just feels more solid, like you're thumping on. You ever put your hand down your drywall and tap and figure out where the stud is? This feels like solid, like you're hitting where the stud is. And this almost just reminds me of a little bit more of where the stud isn't. It's not that it feels cheap and lightweight. It's got a different hand feel to it. That like the metal on this one just feels more solid than the metal on this one. Not a deal breaker, I don't think. It's just literally hand feel. This one is more smooth as well, which in a really sweaty hand can probably feel a little bit more slippery. This one with its kind of matte finish almost feels a little bit more like there's something to it, a little bit more friction. But here's the downside of that. There is more handling noise on the Audio Technica than there is the Sennheiser. I've never noticed handling noise on the Sennheiser. First time out with this, I was really hearing people fidgeting with the microphone, and I feel like you don't hear that with the Sennheiser. So that while this one feels maybe a little bit more stable in your hand, like it's not going to slip or anything if your hand gets sweaty, you hear it more. And I think maybe that's because of the added friction. I mean, I can just... There's just, like, just doing this, it sounds louder rolling it around in my hand than this one does. You're never going to hear the difference on camera, but if you go into a store that has both of these, just put them both up to your ear and just roll them around in your hand, and you're going to hear this one a lot more than this one. And I think it's the type of metal maybe and the texture versus what Sennheiser uses over here. And maybe Sennheiser puts a little insulation in there that dampens it. I'm not quite sure, but this one definitely does not. And then you can even hear like, well, I guess maybe that is a little loud too on the unscrew. Luckily on the Sennheiser, you actually don't have to unscrew it to do anything, but you do not. Like the off switch is on this one, so you want to make sure you mute it first, because if you start going like this, everyone's going to hear that. So you don't want to open that up live. So that's the comparison there. Not a deal breaker. I've done quite a few events with these, and not too often are people like, fiddling around with it like crazy. And it's something you can't really gate out because it is fairly loud. Oh, also I'll say Sennheiser does make colored bands, which are kind of nice if you want to color code to see who has what mic on stage. I've not found anything like that for Audio Technica, so I do feel like maybe Sennheiser is a little bit more prominent in the industry, so they make a little bit more, they make more of these kind of accessories that make your life easier. Audio Technica just does not, and I think it's probably just because Audio Technica does not sell as many microphones. Where should we go? Let's talk about the lav pack. I threw everything on the floor, so I gotta constantly bend down to get it. You know, the lav pack, I thought they said this was metal. Now, the back is metal, but like the front case is plastic. So it's kind of a metal plastic hybrid. I think they advertise it as our lav pack is metal, but it's just the back casing, which is good, I guess. You know, I'd rather have some metal than no metal. One thing I'll say is a downside is I have no issue with the connectors that they use on these, but I had thought about getting one of their like System 10 Pros for maybe my rental inventory, and you know what? It's got a different connector. So at the end of the day, I wish Audio Technica would figure out a standardized, and then if you actually look at their mics, I think there's like maybe like 3 different kind of mic connectors that you can get for these. And, you know, a guy's got to say, why do you keep switching the kind of mic connector you have? I mean, you look at, I mean, I don't know if Sennheiser did it over the years or not, but they just use a headphone jack. I mean, that's pretty simple. Screw-on headphone jack. You know, these guys are using some 4-pin twist-down connector thing, which I have no issue with. But don't switch the connector every time you make a new microphone. That's irritating. And exactly why I will not buy one of the System 10s, because if I already have a crap ton of lav mics, a lot of Audio Technica lav mics, the headset. I mean, the headset I could buy a new cord for, but new cords for that headset are like $80 a piece. And I think that's my dealer cost. So that's just a little on the spendy side. But, or, you know, make little dongles, little screw-on dongles that just are adapters to all your different kinds of mics that you've got. They do make, I think they make a couple of cords, but I was looking, they don't make adapter cords for everything. Like, I don't know. They need to make more adapter cords. Let's just leave it at that. But as far as the belt pack goes, threw me off a little bit that they put the IR sensor on the back. You know, usually I'm used to like flipping this down and having the IR sensor right there, which is kind of interesting because, you know, it's not like they put the IR sensor out here on this one. They put the IR sensor right by all the buttons. It's right there. So I would just say for like, you know, to keep things consistent across the same series, maybe put the IR sensor in the middle. I'm not saying redesign this whole belt pack now, but I'm just saying I think it's kind of weird they put it on the back instead of like right there by the buttons where they put it on the handset. A little consistency goes a long way. As far as the handset or the belt pack goes, I like that it's got a mute switch on top. I like that it's got the multi-function button because I can still just hit the multi-function button and the display pops on to let me see what I labeled this. I went with, as I said before, I went with the Cardioid, and this is kind of a bigger mic compared to my Sennheiser one. They do make miniature ones as well, but I kind of like the bigger one. It's a little bit more stout. The cord's got a little something to it, and you know, I don't really care personally if it's a tiny little lav or if it's a little bit bigger like this. Really doesn't bother me. I'd rather have a little bit bigger mic capsule to maybe have a little bit better sound. I do like that they made the little clip like adjustable, because like the other day I had somebody who was like had their collar was all flared out, so it was like this, and all I had to do was just kind of click the mic in a little bit like that, and I'm like, okay, Cardioid pointing straight to their mouth. You know, so that is kind of nice having a little click adjustment. I haven't really noticed a huge difference. Like I thought maybe going from an omnidirectional microphone that I had with the Sennheiser to a cardioid one with the Audio Technica, I thought I'd get quite a bit better feedback rejection. I don't think I do. Not quite as much. Now, I haven't used the labs as much as I've used the handhelds, so I can't give too good of a review yet if you hear like table thumping or more, paper noises. I'll have to maybe do an follow-up review after a few more events. But the so far the lab seems fine. Let's talk about the headset. Now, what's the big name in a headset? Countryman, right? Like, it just seems synonymous with a headset, whether you've got an Audio Technica headset or not. Like, if you are saying, oh, do you want a headset mic? People might be a little confused. But if they present regularly and you go, do you want a Countryman? They're like, oh yeah, I like a Countryman. Well, this is not a Countryman. But I will say, while it looks jumbo, like that is a way bigger connector than... I like that the cord detaches, by the way. That allows you to buy different cords, but the fact that this cord is like $80 to buy a replacement one, in my opinion, is a little ridiculous. But I like that the fact that if you wanted to, you could just swap out the cord like a Countryman. You got to rewire. Here, you just buy a new cord for it. As far as how it fits on the ear, I don't think it's bad. It's a little confusing right off the bat as to how it actually stays on there. I don't know if I'd use this in one-eared operation, but I think it'd probably be fine. Now, obviously, you would want to bend this a little bit. It is flexible and bendable. And with the cord hanging down, it does add a little bit of tension that kind of keeps it stable on the ear. I don't know if you can see how it fits in the ear. This thing kind of like hooks in your ear, and it does kind of hide behind. This is maybe a little long. I used this on a woman that kind of had a small head, and this really wrapped around the front, and I was getting a lot of plosives, and even with this little tiny little tic-tac windscreen, I was still getting some pretty good plosives on it. It does come with the big guy too that you can put on there. That probably would have fixed it, but it's a corporate event and we don't want a big windscreen in front. So that could be one thing. And obviously, just don't bend it all the way in front of their mouth. Keep it out a little bit if that's the case. But it is cardioid, so you do have to make sure you kind of angle it to their mouth. And also, since it is cardioid, you actually, depending upon what ear you have it on, you rotate this around like that, and there is a little dot on there that shows you what side you want to make sure you don't put the cardioid out this way, otherwise you're gonna have a rough time doing sound. But there is, if you can see it, probably not, because it's gonna focus on my face. There is a little dot. The around the ear, I used it with the around the ear set. I like that it comes with that. It gives you two options. Most of the Countrymen I use are just one ear, and sometimes it feels like it's flopping all over, and you got to tape it to somebody's head if you want it to be really solid. And it also comes with a little alligator clip to put the cord in here and clip it to the back of their shirt so it doesn't get sucked down their shirt, kind of stuck behind a suit coat, and when they turn their head this way, rip it off their ear. So you can give them a little slack with this guy right in the back of the shirt. Now, as far as sound goes, this is actually quite a bit cheaper than a Countryman. I think I bought this for $250, which I think is about $100 under MAP. So I think it retails for $350. Don't quote me on that, but I think $350. As far as sound goes, compared to an omnidirectional Countryman, this thing's amazing. I was in a hockey arena, just super duper reflective. Everything is a hard surface, it just sounds like an arena. And now I didn't go from a Countryman to the headset. So full disclosure there. We started out trying to use lavs on stage, and I was supposed to have like 5 lav mics on stage, and I'm like, this is not working. And I was like, why are we doing 5 lavs? How about the people that are getting interviewed? 4 of them, just hold a handheld. And then the person doing the interviewing, she's going to have papers. I understand. She wants something else. Let's put a headset on this side. The camera's on this side. You'll barely see the mic coming down. And it's just going to sound so much better. And I went from having just insane EQ on the lavs, trying to just fight feedback. Because sound was just bouncing everywhere. And when I didn't have, because we were doing the run through at the time, so I didn't have time to like re-EQ the headset. So I threw the headset on her. It sounded thin like the lavs did, and I just slowly undid all of my notches. And eventually, like, I undid all of my EQ and went 100% flat into that headset microphone. And I had 0 EQ on the PA, and I had no feedback whatsoever. And that instantly became my favorite headset microphone, because an omnidirectional Countryman would have been catching the bouncing everywhere as well. So, super nice to have that. I will try to use that as much as I can. They're kind of spendy, so I probably won't buy too many. I have 1 in beige, 1 in black. I wanted to get another beige one, but back ordered, so I wound up with a black one, because I thought I was going to need 2 for a different event. But that headset mic's amazing. I actually might buy a couple different cords with it, just so I can use them with some of the corporate events we use Shure body packs, so it'd be nice to have a cable that's compatible with Shure. I'd also like to have a cable that's compatible with Sennheiser, since I do have some Sennheiser stuff too. But an amazing headset microphone. I might do a separate review on some of these things, just because they are separate mic systems. But definitely nice. As far as the receiver goes, it's a receiver, right? The dial kind of confuses me sometimes, because when I turn it, clockwise, I always think the menu is going to roll the different way. So it's actually, in my head, it's the reverse of what I think it should be, which is kind of weird to me. I don't know, and maybe that's just me, but that's got to take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, obviously, I like that you can name them. You can name them on the Sennheiser too. The naming system's a little bit easier on the Audio Technica, and the fact that it brings up, your text line, and it brings all the letters, so you can see exactly where you're rolling the knob to. Whereas on the Sennheisers, you're clicking up and down, I believe, in arrows, and it's kind of a never-ending stream of letters, numbers, symbols, and if you're just trying to find the space, it can be a little difficult. It's a lot easier to name your devices on the Audio Technica for sure. I obviously went with the non-network enabled. That's how I wound up saving some money. And really the price difference between these two comes down to the network ability of them. This one does not have, you can't network them together. The Sennheisers, you can network them together and do one sync for, your 4 units if you're rack mounting 4. With these, it's definitely a little bit more time consuming. You have to do it with each mic individually, which the frequency scan isn't a huge issue, but syncing all the features, now they all start out at no change. So kind of wish I had one on. I didn't really want to hook one up and try to get my camera zoomed in on it. You can probably find, I think Audio Technica does have some videos on there that's a little bit more in-depth with the menu functionality. But, there's like 7 or 8 options, like frequency, no change, or are you saving it to the, or you got to rotate, select to select the frequency that you just scanned for. Output power, it starts off at no change. Do you want 10 milliwatts, 30 milliwatts? And there's just a whole thing. Do you want the high pass filter on? I don't know. There's a few. I feel like there's like 7 options, and each receiver, you scroll through, select your options, go down to sync, then hit sync on the mic and sync it. And that's fine, but imagine doing that to like 8 mics. It's a little tedious, so I would say some sort of having them networked maybe with like, I think Audio-Technica's got some software where you can maybe do all that manually. It'd be nice to just set them all once instead of going through the menu every single time. But, you know, at the end of the day, I did save $1,000, so I guess I'm doomed to sit there for 10 minutes selecting all the different menu options. Now, realistically, most of them except frequency, I could probably just change the frequency and leave the rest as no change. But I'm kind of weird in the fact that I don't trust what this was previously set to, even if I was the last person to use it. So I just like to sync. I like to go through and set all the settings and sync it to each microphone. And that's just me. But realistically, I could probably just change the frequency and leave the rest because I'm pretty much the only one that uses these. One other comparison with the Sennheiser that I will do is, I always find it interesting, you know, like the mic has its gain, right? When you talk into it, you have to have mic gain for your voice. And I feel like, actually, let me flip this guy on. It is on. Let me look here. I want to give you exact numbers on this. So I have input sensitivity at -18 on the Sennheiser. And, you know, that's about, like, I could probably have it not cut to -18 for my voice because I'm not super loud, but I kind of have a general purpose gain on there for loud people. You know, I don't want somebody to, you know, the bride's talking into the mic and then this, you know, the best man grabs the mic and is like, wah, you know, and then all of a sudden it's clipping and distorting. So -18 works pretty good on that. Now on the Audio-Technica, I'm still kind of working on fine tuning exactly how the gain structure should be, because I believe with the Sennheiser, the output from the receiver I have at 0, and then the mic I have at -18. And when I gain it up on the board, I'm probably at about 35 plus 35 dB of gain. Now, if you, let's see here. Oops, what am I doing here? So right now, like, you could use this. It's usable at 0, but it doesn't feel like you have a whole lot of gain. And with the lavs, when I was sound checking them with a gain of 0 on, like the input gain on the device, I felt like I was getting, the handheld seems to work okay, but with 0 gain on the body pack, it feels like you get a lot of noise. Like the signal to noise ratio just, you hear a lot of noise. Let's just put it that way. So I started going to +10 on these, and I'm thinking where it's weird, like, you know, to have this at -18, and I contemplate somewhere between having these at +10 to maybe +15 to 20-ish to get the appropriate amount of gain. And what's weird about that is if you leave the Audio-Technica receiver at 0, on my board, the channel gain is at like +5. Where on here, it's like +35. So the Audio-Technicas have a way hotter output. And I'm still working on fine tuning, like if I want the handset at maybe like a +16, and then do I then turn around and put the receiver at -16 to kind of compensate for that? So it just seems weird to only gain up the board, you know, +5 dB on a channel. Just seems odd. Like, to get a pretty hot signal without applying any gain at the board seems a little odd. And it doesn't seem like anything is clipping in the system. I I just find it interesting. You know, everything obviously has a different gain structure. Everything's built differently. But these are way hotter mics. Well, I shouldn't say way hotter. They're way hotter into the board. Maybe a little bit weaker in here. A little weaker here, so you have to put it at the plus 10 to plus 16, depending upon your voice. I mean, my voice, I could probably throw this handset to like plus 20, and this is at plus 18, which is crazy. But then with that, like I said, you get a hotter signal coming out of the receiver, so you barely need to apply gain at the board. And I'm curious if anybody owns these, like what exactly you do. Like, what do you set? This is a 510 mic capsule. Like, what do you set your receiver at? Because I'm curious, because plus 10 seems to be kind of a sweet spot. But still, when you look at the display here, because you can turn this knob and flip it to like a show display that has like your input gain on the handheld and I think your output gain. It'll give you 2 bars. And at that at plus 10 and the receiver at 0 and my board at plus 5, I'm not clipping anything. It's just weird having that hot of a signal going into the board. So do you really dial back the receiver? It just seems opposite of the Sennheiser. Boosted at the handheld, flat at the receiver, and then... Or actually, so it'd be boosted at the handset, cut at the receiver, whereas the Sennheiser, I would cut at the handset and leave the receiver flat. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but I've confused myself a little bit. But anyways, that's kind of my one like weird thing, and it's not like it's not a negative by any means. It's just, it's interesting how differently they work. I will also say I do like the 4-bar battery life indicator. I like having what seems to be 25, 25, 25, and 25. I don't think that's exactly how it's set up, but I will say with standard Duracell Amazon batteries, now not ProCell, but just standard Duracell batteries, when it gets down to where that last battery bar being solid, you're probably good, I would say, for at least like an hour still. Don't quote me on that. But when you get to where that last battery bar is flashing, you better change that battery because it'll be dead in like 10 minutes. Now, it might be different with a ProCell or some sort of rechargeable. I'm not quite sure, but with I've bought Amazon Basics batteries and used them in here. Probably the battery life isn't as good, so I'm sticking with Duracell now. But still, either one, once that starts flashing, she gone. I will say, I do think the Sennheiser is a little bit more energy efficient. I haven't done like a side-by-side brand new battery test, leave these on transmitting and see which one dies first. But I was doing like an all-day corporate event where I was having to change batteries at least once a day. And I wasn't using a handheld, I was using the lav pack, and we were using it in one of those, it's like a foam cube that you toss around, and it's supposed to be for Q&A, and it's got a built-in mic. And as it goes airborne, there's like a velocity sensor or something in there that knows it's airborne, so it shuts the mic off. And then when you catch it, it waits half a second, then turns the mic on. And I had, like, I think I started out with 1 battery bar missing on the Sennheiser, and I lasted into second day, into the 3rd day. Like, it was on all day. Like, it wasn't shut off at all. And I felt like I was changing batteries in these a lot more frequent. So I do think the Sennheiser is a little bit better on battery life. You might be changing batteries a little faster in this, but I don't think like battery life is so compromised that, you know, the extra hour or 2 you might get out of this. And I'm spitballing there, and that's just off one event, and I was kind of going into it with somewhat used batteries. But if you're doing an 8-hour event, you'll be changing batteries in this every day. Well, you'll probably be changing batteries in this every day too, but like I said, I started out with partially used batteries, and I was surprised that lav pack just kept going and kept going and kept going. And I was watching the battery indicator, and it just wasn't dying until I think it was maybe halfway into the 2nd day that I finally put fresh batteries in it. So I do feel the Sennheiser is a little bit more energy efficient. Yeah, so would I recommend the Audio Technica 3000 series? I would say yes. If you're buying one mic, if all you need is one mic for your event, yeah, I probably recommend the Sennheiser. Like, I do feel like maybe the Sennheiser is a little bit better quality if you just need one. Now, if you're buying 10, you know, depending upon your area, it might be nice to have the extra frequency range. So like this tunes from 530 megahertz to 590 megahertz, so you get that 60 megahertz of tuning range. Whereas I think this goes up to 608 and down to, I don't know, minus 42 from 608. That's where it goes down to. So not quite as much tunable range. So if you're buying a lot of mics and you're a little worried that you're going to get into a hotel ballroom, need to use 8 wireless systems, and frequencies are going to be everywhere, you know, maybe go with the Audio Technica. That's a big reason why I did, was just the tunable bandwidth. If you're buying one mic to use for DJing, I'd say go with the Sennheiser. It's nice having the on-off button to be able to just pop it on, make your announcement, pop it off. It's a little bit more handy than using the button on the bottom to turn it on and off. And once you know it, of course, I forgot something important, as we're talking about batteries. I went to go put these mics away, and I always take batteries out of my mics. I've left them in too long and they've gotten corroded before, but taking the batteries out of these, okay, so there's a little tab thing there to flip this up, and then you see like this little notch here where you can just like put your finger right under it and pop the batteries out of the Audio Technica. Tiny little notch, right? Who would have thought that notch was genius? You know who didn't think that notch was genius? Sennheiser. I always, like, if somebody knows a trick to get batteries out of Sennheiser mics, I struggle with it every time because you can't get your fingers under it to pop the battery out. There's nothing on the bottom to push through. So I wind up opening the mic up and like just whacking it until the batteries pop loose. And there's no notch. There's just no notch. Did Audio Technica patent the goddamn notch? Put a fucking notch in there. Okay, that's my battery rage. I'm done.